Yeah.
Let's call ourselves to order. It's Thursday, March 14th. This is the Scituate Planning Board. I need a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
First item on the agenda is a public meeting for a site plan waiver for the Washington Company at 259 Stockbridge Road. Applicant Mr. Keith. Pull yourself up to the table and explain to us what you want to do.
Introduce yourself first. I'm Craig Keefe, 25 6th Ave, Scituate, and I'm looking to install a retail store on 259 Stockbridge.
My name is Steve Rosaro. I'm an attorney with DeFaction, McDonald, Welch, and Scituate down in the harbor, and I'm working with Mr. Keefe on this application. So what's been submitted is Mr. Keefe bought this building back last summer, and he's a commercial lobsterman in the harbor, and he would like to use a small portion of the space to open up a fish market to sell fish and lobsters, nothing to be processed on site, so no cutting of fish, but just fillets and lobsters to be sold on the premises, no cooking, no dining in facilities, nothing of that nature, but a simple fish market, similar to Mulaney's in the harbor. But unlike Mulaney's, there would be no processing of fish, and therefore no sort of byproduct of carcasses and gurry that would need to be disposed and could produce an odor issue, but we don't have that here. So when we worked on, when Mr. Keefe purchased this building, we saw on record there was a determination by the zoning board back in 1973 to change the use of this property. It had been used as a repair site, a repair facility for cars and a machine shop, and it was a pre-existing non-conforming use. And at that point, they wanted to change the use to the sale of paper goods, and they put an application in with the zoning board, and it was determined and granted and authorized for, the site now has an authorization for the sale of merchandise. So Mr. Keefe's application is simply to change, not to change, I apologize, to go from the selling of what is right now the predominant tenant in the building is a carpet sales place. And that tenant is soon to move out, and in lieu of that, there's going to be a small portion of the building that would be used for this fish market. So we see it as not a change of use. It is the sale of merchandise. What was the sale of carpets is now going to be the sale of fish and lobsters.
Before we get other input, can you talk to the current utilization of the building as it exists now?
It is for the sale of carpets. I mean, I know that I just was presented with this letter, and there's some discussion of it being used as a warehouse, but we would not, we would say that that's not an accurate description. There is retail that does go on there. I know that the Art Shannon Flooring, they sell remnants out of there, so people do walk in and purchase remnants, so come in and take a look at carpets. So it is not a warehouse, it is for the sale of merchandise. And in our research too, I mean, if it was being used as a warehouse, it was a non-conforming business for the last 22 years because the property is authorized by the zoning board from the 1973 decision for the sale of merchandise and not as a warehouse.
So that's the only thing that's built for use for?
Well, there's an office upstairs for the Green Company.
The Green Connection,
And-
there's an office upstairs, and that's it.
Laura?
First of all, I just wanted to clarify, I think you were in the office and we talked a little bit.
Yes.
And just so the board understands everything that's,
Yep.
that's really happening on the
Yep.
site, you were also going to be selling some takeout food and then some other meats, some packaged,
No.
like Italian.
Yeah, not the,
salami sort of things. and-
Not takeout, with prepackaged meats. I have another facility in Weymouth. We have a store that I opened on Washington Street in Weymouth in Previty's Marketplace, if you're familiar with that. I have a display case, a lobster tank. I'd like to set a similar thing here and maybe bring some prepackaged Signature Series meat from them to Scituate in a case for sale along with the meat.
Okay, so there's no eating in at all?
No, strictly just just sale, take it and go.
It's one of the things we want to make clear, too, is that there's no preparation on site, so there's no cutting of fish, and I know that was an issue downtown with Mulaney's before, where, you know, when you're cutting fish and the carcasses and the gurry, you've got to store it and wait for it to be removed, especially in the summertime, there can be the threat of an odor. The fish and the meat that's coming here is going to be packaged in
The same
plastic
as I
containers.
do in Weymouth. I buy it every morning in Boston, I bring it to the display case, it's sold. We store it in the refrigerator overnight in containers, and it doesn't last more than 2 days, 3 days, it's sold, so.
Sorry for the disruption.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so the property is in the Residence R2 zoning district. It does, you know, it did receive this determination from the zoning board in 1973. There seemed to be some questions about the applicability of that determination because the right-hand side of the building wasn't there when that determination was made. And then I think I remember, since I've been in Scituate, which has been 1997, I think that shed dormer was built in the late 1990s.
Possibly, yes.
I think I remember it just kind of showing up one day and, you know, being there. So some of this building doesn't seem like it was really covered by that determination, or, you know, it just kind of complicates the zoning history a little bit. One of the other things that's a little more tricky to deal with is this is an unusual site because there's no parking on the site, and there's really no room for any parking on the site. The road layout for Stockbridge Road goes like inches away from the building. So all of that parking is really within the Stockbridge road layout. And so are a couple of small pieces of that building. The bay window, I think, sticks into it, and then some of the concrete in front of the doorway is in it. So my first thought was that the first thing that the applicant really should do is to make sure that, you know, he and the DPW and the selectmen are on the same page about what's in that town space, because there's no adverse possession on town land, there's no, you know, grandfathering on town land, there's just, you know, no real, you know, unless the selectmen vote and authorize it, there's real, you know, there's no authorization to use that. And I think that the building issues wouldn't be that hard to fix, I think. But, you know, the parking is like another issue. And another aspect of the parking is that in past years, from what I was told, and I kind of remember seeing some of this also, maybe in the 1990s, the parking for this building was also on the right-hand side of the building. And that was transferred to a different owner. Originally, 253 and 259 and 261 were owned by the same person. So the parking could be on one, it could be on the other, it didn't really matter. And now they're split, and there's a different owner for 261 than for 259, and there's, you know, nothing really that shows that there's any permission to use that land as parking anymore. So the parking for this property is really kind of a conundrum. I don't know how else to describe it. And I think that the building, you know, extending into the layout, you know, which maybe I think could be corrected, I think that's another issue. So where this was a site plan waiver, it's not really widely distributed. It's not distributed, for instance, to traffic rules. It's not distributed to Board of Health. You know, we distributed it to a couple of different departments, but not really the wide range that we would for a site plan review. So what I was recommending to the board was that you kind of see if maybe he's willing to withdraw his application and go and check out some of these other areas that need to be looked at. You know, the street layout, whether there's an ability to get maybe a better arrangement for the parking. Excuse me, and at the same time, ask him to talk to the building commissioner and get a really definite determination as to whether there's any need for any more zoning relief. And then if those things get worked out, then maybe it would be a good time for him to come back and maybe for a full site plan review. Those are just my thoughts on it.
Any questions from the board?
I sort of have a question for Laura, just concerning the parking. What would be the course of, I shouldn't say recommended course of action, but would the selectmen have to say, you can use this on the right-of-way of the road? Or would it be a zoning thing?
No, it would be a selectman thing.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm not sure at all that they would do that. If they don't do that, assuming they don't do that, then there'd be the option of working something out with a neighbor.
Mhm.
Actually, just a comment, we have talked to the zoning enforcement officer a little bit about that issue, and it's his feeling that the parking in front of the building is similar to the on-street parking in the harbor, that is town-owned land, but it's, and I'm not arguing adverse possession, but forever, it has been used by this business for people to come in and park. And I think that, just from my own observations, and I've been around here for about 20 years, the parking on 261 has predominantly been for the 4-unit apartment building. I mean, there's not that many spaces in front of 261 to accommodate 259 also. There's really no need because, as we've shown on a plan, there's possibility for 8 spaces to be laid out without interfering with Stockbridge Road or the traffic on the road there. As a matter of fact, it's very, very wide there. But there's a possibility of maybe even 1 or 2 more spaces there. So in talking about this issue of parking, which we know is always a concern, it's sort of analogous to downtown where there is on-street parking and that the on-street parking would be sufficient to service the proposed activities of the building.
I think the only difference is that in those downtown locations, I'm really a proponent of having shared parking and not having everyone have to have their own parking and so on. But I think the difference is that the selectmen at some point or at town meeting determined, okay, Cole Parkway is going to be used for public parking. And I don't think there was ever, maybe there is somewhere a decision about that parking being used in connection with this building or surrounding buildings. But, I think maybe it would be good to just make sure and just check in with the selectmen about it.
I mean, I'm not
Or
saying
the DPW, as a start.
I'm not saying that we should assume it, but in '73, when they did, the zoning board did look, and I'm not saying that this is the end of the discussion, but when they granted that authorization for the sale of merchandise and for commerce, and again, it had been used as a commercial retail building for everybody's, extent of their memory. The parking was the same, and again, I know it's not a formal authorization, but it is something that the zoning board at that time, I think, had to consider because the layout was the same, and the parking was being used. I mean, the road layout's the same. The building, as you say, comes right up to the property line, so there really is no other location for the parking to have been taking place at that time. So I think it was somewhat of a consideration, but I agree with you. I mean, 40 years later, it's not something that we can assume that they did some sort of study on or anything like that.
But when they looked at it, it was also a parcel.
Which was part of a larger parcel, which actually had parking.
259 was part of, what it must be like
But
260.
it's interesting, though, at the same time that they put in this application for the authorization for the sale of merchandise, they put in an application for a variance to set up that 4-unit apartment building next door. And so I think that there's got to be some parking considerations with that application, too. So the parking that is on 261, I would imagine, would really not have been considered for 259. There would have to be, you've got 4 units, and so there's got to be, there's a fair amount of parking to service that building. So I think that I'm just saying that the suggestion that I don't think that 261 has ever been a major or the majority resource for parking for 259. And again, driving by, you'll see that, if there's spaces for 8 to 10 parking spaces in front of 259, it's what's been used, predominantly for the building. And that the spaces with 261 have been associated with it.
I think before that application was put in, there used to be gas pumps on that property. I was told. I don't remember that. That was before 73, but I don't know how that works, but there used to be gas pumps on that land. So,
Well, I mean, obviously, since 1973, the train has come in, the roadway's been redone. I mean, it's kind of a weird intersection anyway, I find, as you come to that three-way stop over by the bridge. And so the fact that the parking's right there kind of, I think, complicates it a little bit, because if you're backing out into that traffic. But anyway, I wanted to say that I think this board wholly supports new businesses, and the fact that you're bringing the business to town, I think that's fantastic. And I think the idea and the concept is excellent. We just need to work out some of the details about, like what Laura was saying about the parking and some of the other issues. I did have a question about, when I drove by today, I saw that, I'd call it on the left-hand part of this map or plan where it says retail use.
Yes.
Are you planning to use the entire building or
No,
just this area here?
Just that area on the left.
So what would this be?
That is currently where Arthur Shannon holds his rugs and stuff now. He's be moving soon, and I have no plans as of right now what I will do with that.
Yeah, he runs his business out of there. He's got office space there, he's got some storage space and his materials, and again, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a showroom, but until, when and if, he's scheduled to move out, but at this point, there's no determined use for that space until he does.
Or a determined date when exactly he's leaving, so it's.
Mm-hmm. And then I just wanted to make a clarification, and one of the things I read, it was, you mentioned like lobster rolls,
Yes.
Which I thought was good, but then you said
Well-
tonight, no? So.
Well, not takeout. That is the only one thing we do at, in Weymouth, is a lobster roll. And when I went before them, it was kind of an okay, you're allowed to do cooked shrimp, cooked lobster meat, and a lobster roll with the things that they allowed me to sell out of the case without being under permitting for takeout
Okay.
and stuff like that. Those are the only things that they said, okay, that's fine, but not considered takeout.
So that's not considered something somebody would eat there?
No. They, everything's, they take it and go, but they said that cooked lobster meat and, like I said, cooked shrimp is okay.
And that stuff, and those items would be done at the Weymouth location, there's no kitchen facilities being set up, and again, no preparation taking place in Scituate.
I'm already thinking of the marketing opportunities. Take the train to Scituate, buy a lobster roll.
If you don't get one in Weymouth.
No, so
Are
that,
you putting a saltwater tank in here? Is that what
I would like to, yes.
Yeah.
In both of the pieces that he's talking about are rollaways. It's a display case for the fish, and then a lobster storage tank, for the live lobsters.
How does the water work? Is it?
It's a closed system, yeah, in the tank, and it circulates with pumps and refrigeration, and everything's enclosed.
Do I understand correctly that at this point, this is outside the purview of the Board of Health?
I'm not sure exactly. I
'cause
mean, we didn't give them plans,
Yeah.
but generally when there's any kind of food, if you did do a lobster roll, I think they'd probably at least want to see it just to make sure
sure.
everything was set up properly, and maybe with any food sales also.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great use for the space. I support the use. I think it'd be great. I think the couple questions I have, one is the parking, but I mean, it has been there for a long time. And I know we can stipulate in conditions, that you can do it so long as that parking's available or something like that, and if it ever became a problem, you'd have to provide parking somewhere else. I think we can probably get past that for this type of use. I think the interpretation of the former ZBA ruling, maybe we just need to circle back on that, maybe with the building inspector, and see if he's comfortable with that, and, that interpretation, merchandise, I don't know. Lobster rolls,
Research on that.
I tend to think lobster rolls probably not, like a restaurant use, probably not, but, lobster, yeah, maybe, it's,
Yeah.
I think beyond that, maybe we can get some comfort on that issue. This might be one where we want to think about, like Laura mentioned, doing, instead of a, minor site plan review, go ahead and do a major so we get it circulated a little wider, unless we can get answers before that, and keep it minor. I mean, it is sort of, if you get past the use issue, that's allowed, it is a pretty minor, it kind of fits well into that category of a minor site plan review, because it's not, increasing the retail space. It's already been in that type of use for a long time. So if we can get by the use issue,
And we could submit to the board, I mean, part of our research today was to look at the definition of merchandise.
Yeah.
And going to the UCC, it fits within that, the UCC code, it fits within it, and then kind of falling back onto the old standards of the Oxford, the Webster, and whatever, going into the definition of merchandise, and it falls within that. And I also do think, again, on the parking, again, we've talked, we're not expecting you to take our word for it here, but we've talked to the building inspector and, zoning enforcement officer, and again, he really analogizes it to the downtown parking type situation. And I would say too, and if there's some more detail that needs to be submitted from us on the parking, and maybe some coordination with DPW, and to really, because I'd have to say that one of the things that the plan that we submitted does show is that the markation of the spots, and showing that it does comply with the requirements. But I'm comfortable in saying that the parking here, this off-street parking here, is of a much better and safer quality than downtown, because I know that I was there this afternoon, and when I backed out, I was able to back up and kind of turn around to pull out without even sort of getting into the street. And so, I agree with you. I mean, it's a bit of a funky intersection, but at the same time, I do think it's got some space to it. And
If
you've
there
got
were, just question, if all these spaces were completely full, would you still be able to back out and turn without getting into
It's
Stockbridge?
deep. It is. It's deep, because
Didn't seem that
behind.
deep, but.
Well, when I backed up today, I mean, and actually you were parked right next to me, I was able to curl around the end of his truck. But I mean, if an average space is 18 feet deep, this one, I mean, I think there's got to be like 24 feet to 25 feet, something of that nature, where I'm just saying I know that when I park on street down in the harbor, and I'm trying to, park in front of CVS or whatever, I'm a bit more cautious, and there's a bit more depth in this spot.
There is a 32-foot boat
Yeah.
stored there
Okay.
during the
But-
winters.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking it was more like Reynolds, the package store, where you're right. That, to me, is
Yeah.
always kind of dangerous, that I'm backing up onto
I
Country
think it's a
Way.
little deeper than Reynolds, similar.
Okay,
I
but it
think
is kind of similar, because the road's
Yeah,
right
it is.
there.
It is.
I mean, this one, based on that concern in this corner, I'd love to get, input from the traffic committee at least, because that is kind of a funky corner with the addition of Greenbush and everything in that intersection. I don't know if they have plans for that intersection either long-term. I'd like, you go down there when it's crowded, it is a little congested, so. But I think we could do all that within our site plan review process, get input. And, as to the issue about this parking, I mean, it's true, it's on town land, so the town could take it back anytime they want to.
My initial conversation with the DPW was they were a little concerned about the parking being on that, in that location, so.
So Laura, if we went the major route, we'd get, more input from more.
Yeah, well, this
Town.
isn't even, I mean, this is actually a waiver, so this is sort of there's the waiver, the minor, and the major.
Yeah.
And, if we did the minor, we'd still get it distributed to all the different departments and the traffic rules. This is for just a waiver, and you would have to decide that this has insignificant effect.
Okay.
I mean, that's been our approach, is that because again, if you're, Mulaney's, you go up to Mulaney's, there might be 2 or 3 cars there tops. And so the change in the merchandise sales, we don't feel is going to increase the traffic there necessarily. But again, with, wanting to hear from the town, because again, it's something that has been looked at. There's been business there for over 50 years, and the parking has been consistently used. So to hear that the DPW has concerns, at this point, it's been there for a good 50 years. And I guess, maybe the traffic study, the traffic commission, have there been issues there with, incidents as a result of cars pulling out of there? It just doesn't seem that, and again, this is just, kind of looking back and saying, if they've been operating business there for 50 years, the concern for, it's not like, I'm trying to think of I remember up in North Scituate, there was a request to put in there was an old repair shop there. They wanted to put in a site where they were going to be pulling right out into the intersection. That one kind of set off alarm bells right away, but this one, I mean, again, there's been commerce there, there's been a site there for 50-plus years, so I'm, to say that they're concerned, is just a little...
Well, I think it's because there's a change, and it sounds like something that's going to be pretty popular. I mean, I would see myself being a customer of a fish market much more often than a rug and flooring store, because your rug and flooring, if you do it once every 5 or 10 years, that's how often you do it. Your fish you're going to hopefully be able to buy every week. So, so I think even though they're both retail, when you think about the actual practical circumstances, I think they might be quite different. So I think there's that aspect, and then it may just be that between the train, the reworking of that intersection, maybe other, potential for, other development in Greenbush, that there's just overall a little more concern than there used to be.
Yeah, I guess, I'm not convinced on the, formal ruling on merchandise, and there's also the question about the addition of the other part of the building, if that was done after the fact and everything, which, makes it a more intense use potentially, so.
I'm sorry.
I mean, if we could get past that issue, I don't think there's a lot more here to talk about. That's the issue, I think, and I don't know how we get past that. It's not exactly jurisdictional to us, but if there's enough of a red flag, we're not gonna wanna, keep pushing this down the road if it's a serious concern. I'm not sure how, anybody else have any ideas about how we get over that hump or what the next step is?
Well, I just don't feel as though we've got the expertise to really waive this and, allow it to go forward. I'd like to see it happen, don't get me wrong, it's a great idea, and I hope it does happen. But I would like to get Neil's, kind of official point of view. I'd like to get the traffic commissions or the DPW's official point of view, not hearsay third party, but
Yeah.
either have them come into this room and talk to us or give us something in writing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think we all support this.
I'm also concerned that the abutters seem to have
Yeah.
some hesitation about this.
Yeah, and part of it has to do with traffic, and just
Well, right.
parking and sight lines and all
Right.
that, so.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'll get to that in a minute if we get public comment after.
But I guess the question is, you're in for a waiver right now, so that would be our decision to either deny the waiver or let them withdraw if that's the direction we're going, and come back in for a minor, or just come back another
Yeah.
round with some more information that we don't have to.
Hearing your comments, I think it's best for us to withdraw and then to come back after Neil has had a chance to speak with you and getting some of the other information that you're looking for.
I think the
that'd be
letter from
good.
the butters, you haven't even really seen this yet.
Just took
right?
a
You
quick
got
look at it,
tonight,
but
so-
we, yes,
When I first looked at it, it came back and I said, this looks, I didn't have a problem with the sale of merchandise. Whether I'm selling rugs or whether I'm selling lobsters, I didn't have a problem with that. What I ended up, didn't have a problem with, and my next thought was, well, it's grandfather parking, they had parking before, they've got it now. And then I went through the process of sitting there saying that was an analogous to what they do in Cole Parkway. But then what came back to kind of left me a little bit unsettled is the fact that Cole Parkway is a designated parking area. It's not a function of working in and out of a right-of-way, an existing right-of-way of a road. Right, so that's a clearly defined parking area. So that's the piece that I kind of grappled with there.
I mean, are you referring to the Front Street parking, or are you talking about Cole Parkway in
Cole
behind?
Parkway. In other words, what's happened is some of the buildings and the businesses that are put on Front Street, obviously, they don't own the parking on Front Street. And what they're doing is they basically have access to the parking, and it's permitted parking in the back, with the exception of the Welch Company and the condo arrangement that they have for parking. So that really, parking is provided, it's provided as part of the Cole Parkway parking solution. But then the other, so that was, I grappled with that, is the difference between the right-of-way and being a designated parking area. But then what came back to bother me was the fact that I was putting a dumpster out there, and I also, part of my building went into the right-of-way. So I wasn't sure how to handle that.
Well, that dumpster is just drawn in the location that's currently up from a tenant.
He just put that.
Yeah, no, I'm just sitting there saying, but I mean, I can only, what I've got.
Yeah.
And that was what they kind of grabbed, So my initial approach was, I think, this seemed to be relatively straightforward, but the more I looked at it, I think that there are pieces, in other words, I don't think this board, although I think we'd probably be more than willing to do it, doesn't have authority to sit there and say, you can use the parking right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the other members of the board said, I think you got a perfect use for this location, and it's a needed use in town, and it's a good business to have, and businesses be supported. But at least this time, I think there are questions, and I don't think they're difficult questions to overcome. I just think they need to be addressed.
And we agree, we'll, agree to withdraw the application for the moment, and, but just, again, just to prevent further information, or present further information, the dumpster and this boat, again, belong to the current tenant, the flooring folks. Those would clearly be gone. And if any sort of dumpster was necessary, you can see, when looking straight at the building, to the left, there is space to slide that in and to have that there. So, but that area would be, free of those items.
The last piece that I had was that I'm a little concerned if I'm only going to use the building, and I have a large portion of that, the vast majority of that portion of that building not being assigned to use, what it could ultimately be used for. Because at this point, we'd have no control over what that would be done, unless you file for a permit. You can just do whatever you wanted to do in there. Any other questions on the board? Questions from the public? Sorry.
Sure. Jeff DeLisi, I represent the Hoffmans, who are abutters on both sides, as you alluded to, that you've received the letter which was submitted on their behalf.
Yeah, I shared a copy of the letter prior to the start of the meeting.
Thank you. I'm not going to reiterate everything in the letter, because it appears as if the applicant might be taking a different route. I just want to amplify on a few things that were discussed tonight. I think that the difference between this lot and the lot over by the Reynolds package store is that this is a residential area, and there are houses on both sides, both houses of which are owned by my clients. And this is more than, to them, this is more than just the parking. It's the entire site, the traffic, and the safety aspects that come with it. As was indicated in the letter, in which you alluded to, from 1972 to 2012, the businesses in that building were using parking that was located on my client's property, because the property was jointly held as one lot. And then it was sold off. Effectively, the sale of that four-family dwelling to my client has left this property with no parking. The only parking would be obviously in the public way. The concern is that that number one, the plan that was submitted that doesn't appear to show all of the uses of the property. And we feel that until all of the uses of the property have been determined and vetted, only then can somebody do a proper calculation as to what the required parking spaces are in order to determine how many are needed in the public way and elsewhere. And so one of the suggestions in our letter was that there potentially be an analysis from a zoning perspective. What my clients are telling me is that there are 3 offices that are located on the upstairs, and that they're actually the patrons and the businesses in those offices in particular would use the area that's located on my client's property now to park exclusively. And if you look at the site plan, you can see there's actually a concrete pad, like a walkway, that was utilized in steps. And so, we think that there's also let me step back. There's also a sidewalk that goes from the T parking lot on that side of Stockbridge Road for pedestrians to traverse, and we think that our clients' residents or their tenants and their children and so forth might be using that. And there's no curb cut, it's just all at grade, so that there's really no direction given for anybody who might be using the parking area in front of the building. And so we think that it's something that does have impact, is not minor or insignificant for purposes of the analysis of a waiver. We believe that that this is more appropriately something else. There's also a telephone pole located on the property, so all these things kind of cause some problems from a safety perspective. We also have concerns as to the use. Now, I understand that there, sale of merchandise, and the argument is being made that lobsters are merchandise, and that very well might be true, but the assessor does characterize this property as a warehouse. And the use of the property that has been made over the last 20-some-odd years in the rug business, most of it has been the storage of carpeting and flooring inside that structure. It's not as if there's consumers driving in and out on a regular basis as there would be in a fish market scenario where you're going to have people in and out all day long. So we believe that the trip generation on this property could be kind of tipped a bit. So that's an issue as well. Like I said, I don't want to get into everything. Everything's in the letter. We have a concern with the dumpster, which had been previously located on our client's property, and just a year ago was moved when the property was sold to its current location. Sounds like it might be leaving the premises, which is great, but I don't know how any business operates without a dumpster. And certainly I've never, it'd be great if it happens, that there is no, spoiled fish or anything being, thrown away in the dumpsters. And so those are really the primary issues that my client is articulating.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions to the board, comments from the board?
I mean, what's your take on your next step right now? Are you withdrawing, or what's your?
I am. We'll withdraw the site plan. We've just to get some more information, have a chance for Neil to speak to you folks, and we'll follow up.
If that's the case, I don't think there's much more for us to do.
Well, I think we need a motion to let him, allow him to drill without prejudice.
Okay, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then when you come back as a full-blown site review, as opposed to a waiver.
Okay.
I think it may sound a little bit onerous, so we're, by looking to have you do, but I think in the long run that it protects you as well as it protects this board and the town.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't want to make the investment of getting the business up and running and then find out that something was, there was a deal breaker embedded at someplace that was going to come back.
This reminds me of our experience with the Ice House. No?
Or the pizza place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably more the pizza place. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is my favorite, old business, new business, correspondence, and administrative items. The first item under that is bylaw annual town meeting discussion. Let me give you an update on the bylaws as I understand them. I presented the bylaws, the zoning, as well as the marijuana, as well as the accessory dwelling to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen voted to support all of them with the exception of the accessory dwelling. I think I sent out a memo to it. I think it was a pretty significant discussion took place. It ended up that Mike Hayes expressed his opinions, Ann Burbine expressed hers, and Mr. Joyce expressed his. And when they came to the board, they had reservations about the process that we had for the verification, to make sure that they don't go and become multifamilies. There was also a question as to the size, as to whether the 900 square foot would be an adequate amount of space.
I did have just a clarifying. When that came up, did you say that the other towns around were actually smaller?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I think that one that we had over on Garden Road, I think the primary dwelling was 850 square, or 12.
Yeah.
Some of that over there are about 900 square feet, so.
If you look at the advertisement for the zoning board, it's 69.4 or something like that % increase. Over what it's
Gardeners?
increase,
Yeah.
So that's where we stand with the Board of Selectmen. The bylaw review committee met earlier this evening, and they voted 3-0 to support all of the zoning articles that we put forward.
Do they have a concern, you said too, about the affordable piece as well?
Oh, there was a question that was raised, sitting there saying, why take the affordable out? And I explained that it really doesn't meet what the intent was. And the state's found that out, and we found it out, and I think that we've had one affordable unit.
And it's.
And if you want to, excuse me, but if you want to have an affordable unit, you can designate the area, your accessory dwelling that you're putting in as an affordable unit.
And also the non-affordable is less restrictive than the affordable.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
So no one's gonna do an affordable, because
Yeah.
why would you put more onerous restrictions on your
Yeah.
unit if you can just do non-affordable? There's no one in their right mind would use the affordable
Oh,
section.
no, that struck me
And
too,
and that's why
exactly
we
the
don't
same.
have them anymore, so
Right.
it's,
Right.
So that's the story with the Board of Selectmen, and I think it was unique the way they voted. They voted initially to support the article. The motion was made to support the article. It was second. They've already had their discussion, so at that point, it was voted 3-1, or 4-1 not to support. So they didn't support the motion to.
oh.
So then what they had to do is to come back up at last Tuesday's meeting and make a motion to formally vote not to support. So the first one would be by default. They didn't, the vote to support failed.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So then they had to come back up and they had to take the vote to not to support.
And was that the same vote?
Well, they did that,
Oh, sorry.
they did that on Tuesday, so they did that.
Now, does this mean it still appears on the
It's still on the
town
warrant.
meeting? Okay.
And you said the advisory board will support it.
Well, the bylaw review committee supported.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The advisory board meets on Monday. And I don't know, are you available Monday?
I don't know.
I can be available Monday.
Okay, because it's Monday, it's.
Advisory committee on Monday?
The advisory at the meeting is at 7 o'clock. I will provide you the location. And the first item on the agenda is our zoning articles.
Would it be helpful to go and pitch the residents on Garden Street and have them come participate? They were certainly passionate, if nothing
Yeah,
else.
I can go.
Okay, and that'll be good. I'll be there, but I found it reassuring as when I met with the Board of Selectmen to have Bob on my side here to help me out, keep me from being too far and protected me when they came charging after me.
Obviously not much help in
No,
terms of making the argument.
No, I think,
I happened to meet the one supporting vote on the street the other day in Brockton. And
Really, what a small world.
he expressed significant dissatisfaction with his fellow members of the Board of Selectmen on not supporting us, know what we were about.
Well, I think I was going to mention, in our discussion of everything, I think on the verification process, we talked about how, maybe over time we can tweak that and make it a little bit better, but the article itself is a vast improvement over what we have now in so many ways. I'd be afraid if people are focused on,
Yeah.
little
Should throw the
details.
Baby out with the bathwater here.
And this is, was proposed by us as the planning board, that we're the ones that review these, and we've seen them come in front of us and have firsthand experience about how the current bylaw doesn't work, and it hurts neighborhoods. So I would hope that people would somewhat defer a little bit to our judgment and our experience based on the neighbors that have come in front of us and talked about how problematic it is, so. But
Well, and the Garden Road people did say that they would be at town meeting and they would be supportive, so that's another plus.
Well, that's the whole reason why we proposed the whole thing, is from our experience with Garden Road and trying to, address what we thought was not the right result. It was the right result legally, but not the right result from a planning perspective, so. But,
So, could I ask what the problem was with the process for verification?
Steve Bjorklund.
No, the question came from Mike Hayes, and Mike
It is?
Hayes raised 2 points.
Yeah.
One is that he questioned the legality of it, and I pointed out that it's already been approved by the Attorney General, because I believe that language is virtually the same as being used in Norwalk.
yeah.
The second point was that we would be making it onerous for someone who wanted to come back up and to either buy or sell the property, because that requirement to come back up and have that permit, special permit, is before you had the accessory dwelling. The banks would look at that and they would, it would be a red flag for them to.
But that's why we built in a better process than the surrounding towns, where they can come to us before the sale concludes.
Right.
And the other towns
You can do
have that.
prospective approval, right?
Yeah, the other ones have that requirement, but they don't have prospective approval, so ours is actually an improvement over that.
But I mean, that was the gist of the discussion.
What were the, I guess there was one, the bylaw was sent around, was just a couple days ago, and there were a few minor changes. What were those? I was trying to figure out what the changes were.
Oh, I
on
think
that.
the one that went around was the one with the changes from after the last public hearing.
Oh, is that what that, okay. There was just, it was
Yeah.
like in red.
Couple words.
Yeah, there was a couple
Yeah,
words.
those have
and
now
then
gotten accepted
And there was
into
a,
it.
yeah, referring to like
Yeah.
the section of it, whatever it was, 590s.
If you remember, Steve pointed out a couple little language
Oh, yeah, this
tweaks
one
that
right
didn't
here.
make
Yeah.
sense, and we said, oh yeah, we
Or-
should definitely make that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the or proposed new owner as identified in section 530.4A.
Yeah, it was just the cross-reference wasn't right, and he pointed that out, so we said, oh yeah, let's make those couple tweaks.
Okay.
It wasn't anything real substantive, it was just making it consistent.
As I say, there was, that was the one item that they did was not to support.
So right now, so they voted not to support, but bylaw review commission supported it, we support it, and we'll see if the advisory committee supports it and go from there.
Bylaws review sat there and said, they made a suggestion for a wording change, is that if if you remember the one we're talking about, is the lot width.
Okay,
It
yep.
says, In the opinion of the planning board, they wanted to put in the reasonable opinion of the planning board.
Oh,
And I would have no problem at all with that.
Your opinions are always
Opinions are
reasonable.
Of course.
Assume.
Yeah.
That's,
If I'm correct,
that's
they-
redundant.
Yeah, that's a
That's a
conclusory presumption.
I think you can
What he
propose up to 6
It's
word
not an
changes on the
oxymoron.
floor, I think. too.
Yeah,
So if we wanted to propose that, we can do it on the floor if you want to add a reasonable, I
mean,
think it's,
They didn't seem to be adamant about it, but we'll see what their report is.
yeah.
Whatever you guys want to do.
That's-
Could be.
So if we come back up and we meet with the advisory board on Monday, and that was the last board we need to go through.
Okay.
Okay?
And
Anything else on
it
the
will
town
be on
discussion?
the town warrant regardless.
It will be, yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a question, just for my own information. Like you said, you can make changes on the floor. Could we put that change in beforehand, or would you have to have a whole nother, like,
No, it's-
public meeting?
The warrants, when the warrant is published,
It's,
it's the
it's
language,
set.
and then you could,
Yeah.
you'd make a motion to move as it is printed in the warrant with the following changes.
Yeah.
so we couldn't change it.
You can do it, you can do whatever you want on the floor, and my understanding is if it's less than like 6 words, you can do it verbally. If it's more than that, you have to print it out, and you have to have enough copies for everybody at town meeting. You know, when you
really?
walk in at the
Really?
front, they have that table
Oh, yeah.
that has all this stuff. That's when people make significant changes, they have to have copies
Sure.
available. So if it's adding a reasonable, when you make the motion, you just say, I move we approve this with adding a reasonable right here, or something.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's pretty easy to do.
Okay.
If it's that important, it sounds like it may not be. If it's just a word reasonable, it may
No,
not.
it'd be reasonable.
Just my thoughts.
But, you know, it's, if they think it's important, then it's fine by me, and if not,
The
you know.
inference is that we make some reasonable determinations and some unreasonable determinations.
I mean, we actually still have this standard of, you know, review, we can't be arbitrary and capricious in anything we do, so maybe it's not necessary.
And to me, it's like, what's the definition? What's reasonable to me may not be reasonable to you.
It's up to the
So I
courts.
know.
The other,
The reasonable man
the other
standard.
bylaw that I wanted to talk about is the demolition bylaw.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Demolition delay, demolition review bylaw, I think that's, I didn't know whether the board had a chance to look at that and whether the board had any thoughts.
And this was proposed by the Historic
Is this a
Commission,
new-
is that where it
this
came
is a new
from?
bylaw?
This would be a new bylaw that's been proposed by the Scituate Historical Commission.
Do you know, did they model this on like this, you know, the state model or another town? I mean, I see these, a lot of towns have this. I haven't reviewed this exact language, but it's another tool for the Historic Commission. So if you come in for like a demolition permit of a building that has a historic, flavor to it or meets the qualification, they actually can delay your demolition for a period of time, but they can't stop it ultimately, but you can delay it, for sometimes a year or two, sometimes they get delayed. And it's supposed to allow time for people who are interested in preserving it, time to explore options to save it. Either through buying it through the people that are going to demolish it, or making an agreement with them, or finding a different use for it. So it's just it's a tool for them to be able to delay historic structures from just getting
Yeah, that's
bulldozed.
exactly what it is, yeah. I think there was some kind of a groundswell of interest in this that's come up over the past couple years.
Was this
I'm not
caused
sure.
by any particular incident?
I don't know, Bill, do you think there was any?
I don't think so, I really don't. I think
I don't think it was any one, yeah. Yep, sorry.
For instance, just so that I understand what this is going to cover, we're looking at subdivision off of Country Way that has the antique cape sort of in the center of it, barn up by the street,
305 Country Road.
across from Black Beach.
Yep.
And I guess the intent of the proponent of that we heard was that existing building is probably in too poor shape to try and maintain, so that would come down as part of the process. Now, that's obviously over 100 years old. Would that fall under this
Yeah,
bylaw?
yeah.
So they have to apply to the Historic Commission, and then they make the determination whether it's historic character or not. And if it is, they can basically delay you for up to 12 months. You can't get your demolition permit until they either approve it or the 12 months lapses.
And
Well,
is
this
the-
sounds like it's setting up some standards. I don't know if they're consistently defined somewhere, but they have to determine whether the building is significant. Is there a determination of what that means?
Well,
Well,
it's
yeah, there's-
pretty broad.
They list you
It's up to the
says here-
Historic Commission, but it's
reasons,
pretty
It's up to the
broad.
Historic Commission.
It is pretty broad.
Pretty much anything that's that age is, they have
And then-
discretion to determine it historic. Yeah.
Right, but the only thing that you can get that delay invoked for is a preferably preserved significant building?
Well, the commission they make a determination, one, that it's a significant building, and if they do that, then they could determine that it's significant in terms of historic, but it's not worth preserving. But it's a discretionary decision on their
That's
part.
a decision made at the public hearing, or
Yeah.
after a public hearing.
Yeah, and they do have quite a bit of discretion. If you look at the definition of significant building, it's got the obvious ones, like if it's on the National Register,
Yeah, right.
or if it's, even if it's eligible, which, that's a little bit, you're kind of
Vague.
guessing. Or if it's associated with a person or event, or, you can make that argument for virtually any building in Scituate that's over 100 years old. So basically, it gives the Historic Commission the discretion, if they want to delay a demolition permit for up to a year. And that's the point of it.
To affect what alternatives, have the building moved off-site?
It could be anything.
Things like that?
Yeah.
Things.
And at the end of the day, after the year goes by, they can't prevent you from demolishing it.
Right.
They just delay it, and it's supposed to allow, people who want to advocate for the preservation, or maybe somebody steps in and buys it, or, or they find an alternate use, or they convince the developer that, hey, if you, rehab it, we'll lift the demolition delay and, let you do this other alteration. But I think this came about because, I don't know when it started, but a lot of the towns, especially in the North Shore, seem to have them everywhere in the North Shore.
Mhm.
Salem, Gloucester, every place like that has them. And I think because what happened is when, I don't know, probably when things started really getting heated up with development, people came into these historic towns, and developers would buy, large swaths of commercial property and just bulldoze them. And people would be like, oh my God, that building's been there for 100 years. Nobody notified us, and it's just gone. So this is a tool to do what it says. It just delays the demolition and gives people a chance to catch a breath and say, is this the right thing?
I just think it walks a very fine line between having the person's property rights and not.
It does.
It does.
And because if it ends up that I've got a building that's 100 years old that has some significance to it, it's identified through whatever process, right?
It also seems to obligate the owner to do things like allowing access to the property, securing the premise. I mean, there shouldn't be sort of carte blanche. I mean, the owner shouldn't be in a liability situation by providing access.
Nor should that person have to suffer whatever additional cost it is to come back up and rather than take the building down now, as to have to wait a year.
Well, look under the enforcement and remedies. There's a $300 per day fee that can go on 2 years.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's, right?
It's a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
But I guess, having said that, I've not talked to his historical commission. I'm more than happy to do that on it. But they don't know, they've not been present when any of these presentations regarding it have been made. I'll check with the historical commission to find out whether indeed they've gone through either the advisory board or through the board of selectmen on it.
They were at the
Through
selectmen's
Mass
meeting the other
Historic,
night,
Simon
so.
and
Trying to
Mass
solve
Historic.
the problem.
Yeah, has this been a problem in our town up to this point?
I would guess that probably a lot of the buildings we wanted to preserve are probably long gone. You know, you look at the harbor and stuff, you know, there's probably not, in terms of commercial, my guess would be that this would probably affect residential more.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
portion of the houses in town are over 100 years old.
Yeah, but you look at like Front Street, I mean, how many buildings are still there that are that old? I mean, I guess they say.
Maybe like 3, yeah, there's
Yeah,
not many at
The old
all.
Welch Company, the dance studio where.
About
But if you
the
consider
Bolaway,
CPS,
how old is that?
Highway store is. It's at least 60. I was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wouldn't be
60 years
surprised.
ago.
It could be over 100,
So-
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could.
So my guess is this will probably affect, you know, residential more than anything in our town. And a lot of other towns have, you know, bigger historic districts, like someplace like a Newburyport or somewhere like that, you know, applies to all those buildings and.
Yeah.
Let me suggest to the board, that we either take action or we don't take any action on this, and I just get a sense of what the board's thinking is.
I would be supportive of it. I know that, you know, again, I understand what you're saying is that it does infringe maybe potentially on certain property owners' rights, but it seems like a reasonable and a good thing. I mean, so that someone just doesn't bulldoze a resource.
I mean, the only issue I have with, I think if we had a much larger historic district, you know, in terms of commercial.
Or an historical.
We don't have
Yeah,
an
if we had that, I'd be more concerned. I mean, my concern with it, and I'm not an expert on this about all the variations of this, but when you look at the definition of demolition, I'm concerned that it might be too broad. I can understand if you're actually gonna demolish, you know, raise a house or something, how that to me would make sense. Maybe in that context, it's 100 years old, but when they talk about, you know, defacing, commencing any work that's a partial demolition, I think about people doing like an addition on their house or something. And I,
Building accessory dwelling.
yeah, and I'm a little concerned about that. I mean, it is the intent of the bylaw to be, or these things to be pretty harsh and say you can't do anything. Like in Boston, you have to go in front of they've got a architectural commission for
Right.
buildings. So this is short of that, but it is the intent that you've got to go get the historical commission's approval. And I'd be a little concerned about the definition being too broad, that somebody goes to, you know, replace a window with a vinyl window,
Right.
and it triggers this
Right.
12-month delay or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'd have to look into that to see how broad it is. Karen's shaking her head.
No,
No.
but that's not the intent of these bylaws, to, you know, when you do a vinyl window replacement.
No, I know it's not the intent, but when you look at the legal definition of it, I would like to see, you know, the cases and see, could it be read that way? Do they have one in Norwell? Do they have this in Norwell? Yeah, so you have experience with it. And
Is it the same wording essentially?
I didn't get a chance to look at
Yeah.
the same wording.
See, that's what I'm feeling, as though this is just kind of sprung on us. And, you know, we're being asked to support it for inclusion in our zoning bylaws. Has it been vetted against other bylaws in surrounding towns? Has it been looked at by the Mass Historical Commission? Is it legal? You know, has the Attorney General's office checked it?
Well, they don't check it till we pass it, but, I mean, I'd be curious to know where
Okay,
they
that's
got this
true,
draft
that's right.
from. Is this
Yeah,
modeled after another town?
we can find it. I'm sure
Yeah.
it
It'd be
is.
worthwhile to
Has our town attorney checked it?
Historical Commission come to our next meeting?
I think he'd be very happy to
think
do
that'd be a
that.
good
I mean,
idea.
I ran into him
Yeah.
in the hall at the selectmen's meeting, because I think he did come to a selectmen's meeting. I think he'd be very happy to do
Why
that.
don't we see if we can,
Yeah.
have,
I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I just think, 4, 5, 6 pages of fairly
Of a brand new
dense
bylaw.
prose is,
Yeah,
Is
we
this
we
on
need a
the
little more backup
town meeting
here.
now?
yeah.
It's on this way?
Yeah.
And is it
Yeah.
supported?
well,
That I don't know. I don't know.
But why don't we see if, what is it, Dave?
Dave
Doug,
Hall?
Doug,
Doug, right, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I mean, maybe they can answer those questions. I know, like with the accessory dwelling, I mean, we spent a lot of time looking at all the towns around us and comparing the pros and cons of different things. So maybe they've been through that, and this is where they wound up, so, but I would
I'm-
like to hear that.
I'm guessing that they have, because I don't, they don't really have any staff support from anybody in town hall. And there is someone at Mass Historic, his name is Chris Skelly, who is kind of a, like, statewide resource, and who works with towns on these bylaws. He probably just said, here's a good one, here are like 3 good ones,
Yeah.
pick one.
Well, that would be,
I'm guessing,
I
that
mean,
would
that's,
make me more comfortable if I heard even that.
yeah.
that's my only real concern, is I wouldn't want that, the law of unintended consequences to kick in, and all of a sudden, the giant stock of 100-year-old houses we have around town, every time they need to do siding repair or something, this kicks in, and I don't know enough
Yeah.
about it. I know that's not the intent, but
Yeah.
if it's drafted broad enough, it could be used that way, so just want to make sure that's not the case.
I
Well,
mean, I
Yeah,
can see if you
okay.
ended up that, like the Moran property, I think is an excellent example of how you can take an older 100-year-old plus building, and
Yeah.
then come back up and preserve that at the same time,
Yeah.
provide, I mean, if that's,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the intent, though, is just to actually have a review. I mean, because right now, if I have a very historic barn, I mean, I'm assuming I could just get a demolition permit, no one knows about it,
Yeah.
get rid of it. Whereas at least this has a review, and you know what, the historical commission or this, the board says, oh, well, you know what, you're right, you can demolish your barn, it's
Yeah.
fine. But at least they looked at it. That's what I think the intent is.
Oh, I think it is, I'm just saying.
The intent is, yeah, it's just whether the scale is balanced enough
Yeah.
here between the owner of the property and sort of the historic preservation.
You don't want to inadvertently give them too much discretion, then down the road it gets abused somehow. I agree, the intent, I agree with the intent 100%, but it's the legal language. Is it too broad, or is that, what everybody's doing, and, is there an alternative, is it?
so why don't we see if we get Doug to come to our.
Invite him.
That'd be
Yep.
great. Also,
Yeah.
good required reading, if you haven't seen it, Lost Boston. I'm sure you probably know about this, Bob.
No.
It's a book that, it documents all of the beautiful buildings and
buildings that
historic
have been-
structures in Boston that have been lost over the years, over the last like 200 years. And you look through it and you're just like cry, because there's been some, beautiful things that have been destroyed.
There's a good book like that I looked at about the, after the Boston fire.
Yes.
It's got maps
Yeah.
of all the buildings that were lost.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But this is
Yeah.
called Lost Boston, so it is pretty interesting. So I think that's the intent, is to not have a book that someone's going to publish called Lost Scituate.
Okay, so that takes care of the bylaws and the reading assignments for the week. Next item, we have accounting.
Yeah, we have some. Okay.
Okay. I move that we approve $1,200 to, Armory Engineers for engineering review services for 568 First Parish Road.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay.
And the second one, I move that we approve $1,206.50 to Beals and Thomas for the construction inspection and services for Kobe's Run subdivision.
The accounting process all done, we've got our number.
No, but I put it in I just put it in for you to take a vote on tonight.
Okay.
If you don't want to.
No, I don't.
Oh, she's okay with it now. Tricia, you mean?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. She's okay now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
she's okay
There
now.
was some concern, so, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as,
It's just
Okay.
over, it seems as though the developer might have, given her a little phone call, and,
I know that happened. But
yeah.
anyway, we're back, so we got an
Second.
amount, second. All
It
those
was
in favor?
$1,206.50.
I thought attorneys were the only people who could charge in 15-minute increments.
We
Yeah.
charge it 6 minutes.
I know
Yeah.
you do. I know you do.
Gotta get down lower than that.
Not only that, they charge you to listen to the music, too.
Mhm.
I did just want to mention on that same topic, we're going to be asking for more detail on all the bills from these consulting engineers, because they tend to, be sort of quick with the billing process. I mean, not in the sense of unfairly billing their time, but I think they just don't spend the time doing a complete bill, and they really have to. It's too sensitive an area to not do
Aaron
it,
and I
so.
spent a good portion of the morning talking through that, so I think.
Yeah, I know you did, and that was great.
Okay.
Good that you did.
Next, minutes, we have minutes?
Anything, yeah.
Well, we're trucking right along. Liaison reports? I
Liaisons?
mentioned CPC, I've gone to 3 CPC meetings, presented the zoning articles to the Board of Selectmen, and I get home at 11:15. If anybody else wants to attend those meetings, I'm more than happy to let them.
Any quick update on CPC?
All of the CPC articles that were approved were submitted to the advisory board last night. That was another one, it was about 11 o'clock meeting. They have not voted on them yet. The Board of Selectmen came back up and voted the CPC projects with the exception of 2. One is the storm windows for the, I can't think of the name of the chapel.
Mission
Union?
Chapel.
Oh, Mission Chapel, is that?
Oh, the one on Old Oak
Little
Bucket?
one, yeah.
Yes, they voted not to support that. It should be in church and state. The second one, they voted not to support, and that was our recommended scenic road signs.
Mm.
Right? Then apparently, the thinking there is that the signs should be done through the DPW and handled through the town budget. And it also is that they're in the process right now of looking at all of the major intersections and looking at they've got a sign reduction program that they're looking at. So when you come to intersections, you may have a speed limit, a stop, you have multiple signs.
Right.
What they're looking to do is to minimize the amount of nonverbal direction you get as you drive down the street.
So we're removing all the stop signs?
So,
But the scenic road signs will just replace the existing road signs. That's not
Yes.
going to be an additional sign like they've done in
No.
Norwell, right?
Right.
Actually, I ran into Al after the end of the day today, and he was pretty optimistic about them being able to fund those signs out of their
great.
budget. So, which would not have happened if, Karen hadn't started this whole idea going.
and the Harbor Walk, that was supported?
The Harbor Walk was supported, and they were all supported with the exception of, from the Board of Selectmen standpoint, with the exception of the signs and the chapel. And they're all in favor of that. They were very, very supportive of both the Harbor Walk and the walk from Shones down to Greenwood.
Oh, on the Country Way? Okay.
And I guess I was gonna mention the last meeting, I didn't make it here because I was at advisory committee for the petition on the meals tax and economic development stuff, and we went to advisory and got full support of the advisory committee on that entire piece. And I'm not sure where they're
Selectmen
at.
voted it Tuesday, but I don't know how they voted.
I don't know either. They were talking about, we presented to them as well before that, and I think they had some other ideas, at least a couple of them did, about where the money should go, but they sounded in favor of adopting the meals tax for all the same reasons we discussed. And I don't know how they're gonna come out. I think they mentioned they may or may not make their own proposal on it, but like I said, when we went to advisory committee, they were enthusiastically supportive of it, thought it was a great thing for the town, and, we made a lot of analogies to the CPC fund and how much good that's done for the town, and how this is really an investment to make more money for the town. It's not just going into the town budget. It's there with a purpose, so.
Yeah, so, right now, there's just the one, right? Because when the
one.
paper came out, it sounded like there was going to be 2,
I don't know, it's up to the selectmen. I guess
articles.
they had talked about, I still don't know how they came out. They were talking about maybe proposing their own version, and they have a lot of time to do that. They could do it up to I think even like a couple weeks before town meeting. If you do it by petition, you've got to do it back in December, so we did ours a long time ago, so I don't really know where they're at on that.
Okay.
They may still be thinking about it. But right
God,
now,
I haven't heard.
the one is on there now, which is
Right.
adopt the meals tax, put all the money for economic
Economic
development for the
development,
town
yeah.
and
Can you call
stabilization
Kim in the
fund.
morning and find out? Want me to
Oh,
call
yeah,
them?
sure, yep.
That would be worthwhile.
Because I think, I mean, just in general, if there were two articles, that would be very confusing for people, I think.
Well, they'd vote on one first and then vote on the second one second.
Okay, well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I don't really know how
We
that's,
end up with 2 meal taxes.
I'm not sure how that's gonna come out, but it's, their discretion to
breakfast
do
and
that. But,
lunch.
we've gotten support from everyone so far, other than the selectmen are still making up their minds, I think, on it.
Okay,
But the money from the meal tax is going to a specific fund, right?
Stabilization.
well, that's
fund,
what
yeah.
they proposed, yeah.
That's
Or you
what
should
the
say your
petition proposes, that it's earmarked for that purpose only, so.
Mhm.
And,
Which I think is important.
yeah, so.
That
There'll be,
brings us-
there'll be more to come, I'm sure. As it gets closer to town meeting, you'll see more stuff in the paper and everything and all of that. So we'll just see how that plays out.
The next item is town planner report. What I've done is, I've asked Laura to hold off showing the slides of her vacation until after the meeting is adjourned, so.
Okay,
Understandable dream.
yeah, didn't. I was able to get a email back from the town accountant about the Laurelwood pedestrian account, saying that the planning board had the authority, she believes the planning board has the authority to spend that money, and that there shouldn't be, any problem with just tapping into it without, going through any other levels of approval, which is great.
How much money is it?
It's 10,400 and change. So it's enough to do something. And my thoughts about what to do next were to get in touch with the Cecil Group, who did the initial report, to lay out the Harbor Walk, and just ask them, we got $10,000, not for them, but what improvements do you think we should focus on for that amount of money?
Wouldn't
Yeah,
that
what could
service
be-
cost us, though, to some degree, even a little bit?
Well, I don't know. They've been pretty friendly over the years.
Okay.
I have an old friend who works there,
Okay.
so I might be able to get him to, cough up a little information. I'll try. I try not to take too much advantage of my friends, just enough.
If we coordinate that with Mark, that would be good, because Mark had asked
Yeah.
me about how do we liberate the money.
Okay.
I told him that I'd have you check, or we check, we keep back to Mark, so.
Okay, I will do that. And the other thing I just wanted to report on really quickly is that we had the kickoff meeting today for the 3A corridor study that we're doing with Cohasset. And it was a, 2-hour plus scoping session meeting, and I'd say about 90% of that time was spent on Cohasset. I think in the future, we're going to be working with them on a conference call type basis. But we talked about the desire of the town to have some more business zoning towards the Cohasset line, and to make some improvements in that Henry Turner Bailey Road intersection to make it safer. And they also talked about sidewalk. They're looking at a lot of changes potentially in Cohasset to, for instance, narrow down that 4-lane section of 3A right around Starbucks. There's kind of a 4-lane section, and to kind of, they called it like putting it on a road diet, slimming it down. And,
Traffic calming.
That's a.
well, yeah, they didn't use that word. They used the word
It is.
road diet.
It's
So,
dangerous.
I
Are
thought
they
it was
thinking
part-
about creating a turn-in, though,
It
to
was
go
part
into
of the
that?
Shaw's development package that
Starbucks
they
area and
actually
all that?
made that
That's
road.
where hangs up.
they might, yeah, the accident rates there are
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
way higher than average. I mean, they're very, very high.
The car went right into the front, I think.
Yeah, I hope they count that one.
Yeah.
They're going to
Well-
really be analyzing all the accidents and how they occurred and what happened.
It is really bad, because, I've been there a million times, trying to pull out, go to the left, and there's a car trying to turn into the Starbucks.
Yeah.
And then, they're actually waving me on,
Yeah.
but they don't see that there's cars behind them to the right that are,
Around.
that are going around, so I can't make a left, and you're kind of at this weird, I don't know.
Yeah, they should make it a
Yeah.
turn only when.
Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah,
I
they
understand,
should do
it is
that.
bad, so that's
Yeah.
I'll concur with that.
Oh, good, okay. Okay, and
Being the
it's
primary user of that area.
Exactly.
Starbucks.
You know,
Hey, on a tangential question,
Yeah.
speaking of the Scituate Racket Club, And I know that they did the expansion to the pool, but I noticed today there was like all kinds of work being done, like right next door up on the ledge. Is that part of that
They're doing a-
expansion?
That's the
It's
paddle
something
tennis up
different.
there.
Court, right, aren't they?
Yeah, the
Is that
paddle
that-
tennis courts up there.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paddle ball thing,
Yep.
yeah.
I don't
I didn't
remember that
even know
being part of anything we
was.
approved. Was it?
Yeah, it was on the plan, they had a.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's right,
future
yeah.
Paddle ball court, yeah.
Oh.
But it's in Cohasset. so-
Right, right.
Yeah,
Okay, I was just curious.
yeah, no, good
I'm
question.
looking for a second to Bob's motion.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.